How you doing, Charger Nation? This is Charger Dad. Again, you can find me on Twitter and here at YouTube. Today, we're going to talk about Keenan Allen and all the recent controversy with him calling out the media. So that should be fun. Let's go for it. All right. So we have some controversy, I guess you might be able to call it, with Keenan Allen and the sports media, right? So we're going to dive into that a little bit. This isn't specifically all about Keenan Allen. It's more of a general topic that I like to talk about with essentially how I feel the major sports media has been somewhat lazy. That don't specifically cover the Chargers. And of course, we're going to cover about Keenan Allen himself, being Charger fans here. We love Keenan Allen. Everything that he contributes to the team, we know a lot more, quite frankly, than a lot of the media either claims they do, or maybe they truly just don't pay attention to the Chargers at all because we're on the West Coast. So that's something that we're gonna talk about today. So if you're interested, let's buckle up and have some fun. So, what brought on all this controversy as of late? Well, about the last week and a half, we've had Keenan Allen on Twitter directly calling out sports media, right? So, we'll start off with the first one. So, and what brought it up, right? So, the first real kind of big thing that happened was obviously when Tyreek Hill got traded to Miami. What did Keenan Allen say in response? Again, not directed directly at the media. He says something to the effect of, "Oh, this is going to expose some people," right? So of course the media takes this, spins it, and says, "Oh, who's he exposing? Right? Is he exposing Tyreek? Is Tyreek Hill leaving the Chiefs? It can expose Patrick Mahomes, or is it going to maybe on the flip side expose Tua in his inability to get the ball to Tyreek Hill?" And I mean, everybody kind of have their opinion on who he may or may not be referring to when he says expose. But the media went with it, and they went with it hard. Maybe they had nothing else to talk about, so they use it as a topic of conversation, right? And essentially, as you know, when you watch something like on the NFL Network or ESPN, they'll pose a question. They love doing it, and then they have all their panelists go around, and then they talk about said issue, right? So in this case, they say, okay, there's some controversy here with what Keenan Allen said, and of all people, Nick Wright, he was getting a little heated because, in case you don't know, I'm sure you do, he's a pretty openly a big biased Chiefs fan, so he's going to immediately take offense to this type of rhetoric, or assume that he's specifically calling out, let's say, the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, for example. Which actually, I don't know if I take it that way, but he clearly did. So he went on this whole diatribe about how Tyreek, leaving is not going to affect Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, which of course it will, to I think a good extent. But then he takes a moment and directly attacks Keenan Allen. And when you watch the clip, if you haven't, I mean, the other hosts kind of take a step back. They kind of look like, oh, isn't it right? Is he really doing this? He's calling out Keenan Allen to his face, saying, "Hey, who do you think you are?" He literally says this. "Who do you think you are, Keenan Allen?" And then he lists, "Oh, all since your rookie season, the Chiefs beat you, and in postseason, all this stuff." Like, Nick Wright, like really, you're the one calling out Keenan Allen, specifically saying to Keenan, "Who do you think you are?" Well, before we get into this any further, if anybody is going to call, have this type of call out on Twitter and be able to back it up, it would be somebody specifically like Keenan Allen, who plays the Chiefs twice a season, if not three times a season, right? And um, anybody who has the ability to kind of back that up, it's him, right? So there's literally, I can't think of anybody else that would have the ability to say what he said. Again, it wasn't even a direct shot. He was just kind of making a generalized statement, but have that ability to say it and, and back it up. And so, of course, Nick Wright then lunges essentially full force at Keenan Allen, saying, "Hey, who do you think you are?" And then listing off all these things as if he's not a qualified wide receiver. By the way, we're going to dive into what qualifications of a wide receiver that Keenan Allen makes, because he's frankly a fantastic wide receiver. Us Charger fans know that. But the national media, if they want to spin certain things, we've talked about narratives before. If they want to spin a certain narrative, they do it as they please. So let's kind of go then into the response. That this is where it gets really juicy, as you would say. His direct response, essentially, to Nick Wright, right? So he says, "These sports analysts starting to get real disrespectful on TV." Right, flat out, just you're calling me, you're calling us athletes out, and it's extremely disrespectful. It's one thing to have an opinion, right? These are opinion shows, absolutely, but to say another person can and cannot do what they can or cannot do, okay, and then you're tarnishing. This is, to me, this is the big thing here. You're tarnishing people's name because of, let's say, a bad game or a bad season, right? Okay, and if we maybe psychoanalyze it and dive into Keenan's performances this past season, it wasn't he maybe had a bad game or two. I think maybe he's referring to Nick Wright's mentioning the playoffs, like 0 catches or something. But he had a great season. Statistically average, everything, like he's just had fantastic season. And he, by the way, goes on to call that out in his next Twitter later in the week. So in that tweet, he then says, as if they know it all, right? As if essentially Nick Wright knows it all, which obviously he doesn't. He doesn't play the sport. Then this is another little interesting tidbit. Then he says, "See us in person and act all cool," right? So meaning you're talking trash behind my back in national media, but if you see me in person, I know exactly how you're going to act. You're going to be the nicest guy, try to get that good, juicy interview with me, and pretend like you aren't talking direct trash, right? I think that's a very valid argument that he made, right? I mean, of course, Charger Nation on Twitter immediately go and back Keenan up and say, this is a fantastic wide receiver. How dare you even say these kind of things directly about Keenan? But, if you think about it, there was actually, I think, leading up to even before this, I think Keenan was getting a little. This is just my assumption. I think he might have been a little bit offended by the media before this, all because specifically recently with the whole trade of Keenan Allen, the hypothetical trade. Right? So, hey, Green Bay, they might, if they were going to request a trade to try to get somebody, a wide receiver that maybe they don't have a good quality wide receiver. Maybe they could trade for, I don't know, let's say Keenan Allen. He's in the last year of his contract. He might be a good candidate. Well, you know, it was Good Morning Football. And by the way, I actually love that show. Good Morning Football, they're the ones that essentially started this rumor. And guess what? If you haven't heard, Brandon Staley, we're assuming, is either Brandon Staley or probably more likely Tom Telesco, called up directly to Good Morning Football and or the analyst that was spewing that garbage, these hypotheticals, and basically said, "Hey, we are not trading Keenan Allen under any circumstances, not only because we love him, but quite frankly, we're in a go for it all season. Like, we need our best players on deck. How dare you even bring up this type of conversation?" So this is literally brought up on TV later down the road, basically saying, yeah, we probably shouldn't have even mentioned Keenan Allen in this as a suggestion for getting traded, because we all know a one little suggestion happens, and from there it balloons. All of a sudden, everybody and every news analyst has now this new hot, juicy topic to cover, and this is kind of what I wanted to get into the media as a whole in general. Right? And we'll come back to Keenan Allen in a minute. But as a whole, right, it's this cycle, right? They need some sort of piece of drama to latch onto. They then pose that question to all of their analysts, right? And then they all bicker and argue back and forth. Oh, you should trade him. You shouldn't trade him. This and that, right? And that's fine. At its heart, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? That's a viable way to really get a good conversation going and stir things up. Frankly, we're talking about it now, so I mean, it's trickling down, and we still have a chance to talk about it. So it's good. It's good for media consumption and listening, but it definitely takes a toll directly on the players when you're literally calling them out in person. And as Keenan said, right, you're tarnishing, you're tarnishing people's names. So Keenan Allen, he's got bravado, but at its heart, he's still clearly a pretty humble guy. If you got 3 to 4 or more daughters, you're going to be a pretty humble guy, all right? So. The thing is but he's still prideful, right? He still really cares about the production that he has and what he's providing to the team, and you can tell he thinks in terms of the big picture. It's not just about me. Some wide receivers are very well known in the past about being me receiver, and Keenan isn't that. Right? He has that bravado. He has that confidence, that self-confidence that you need. If you were to ask Keenan who's the best wide receiver in the NFL, he's going to say himself. And quite frankly, I wouldn't want it any other way. Right? And that's just a needed quality, especially in being for a good wide receiver. So that's really, really important. But when he's talking about tarnishing who he is and his name, you're basically saying, hey, you think I care more about my personal stats and not about the team? Well, let's look at Keenan, okay, and his past, right? Actions speak louder than words. So in that sense, okay, we look at, okay, not only is Keenan getting all of the great stats like the 1,000+ yards and all of that, but you might look at, okay, well, he's maybe averaging 6 to, let's say, 6, 7, 8 touchdowns. He's not getting the double-digit touchdowns every season. Well, if you look at the actual tape, and again, I don't claim that I'm expert looking at tape, but it's pretty evident as a Charger fan. he blocks like no one's business, right? He doesn't quit on routes. In fact, he even talked about it with Herbert, and I'm sure it was the same with Rivers. Like, you know, I don't never quit on a route because I need to be there in case there's that crazy last minute throw, which we've seen now Herbert do several times. So, that is what I mean by actions speak louder than words. In that is what you're seeing on the field. Keenan does not give up on plays. He does not give up on his team. He genuinely cares about his team, and its overall success. So all wide receivers are somewhat have that bravado of being kind of a meme guy on the surface, but again, actions speak louder than words, and Keenan's actions clearly show that he's a team first person. He cares about his craft and his separation ability above all else. It's evident in his just God given physical abilities, but also his tenacity and effort to grow and develop that. Right, and then you can see also all of the younger wide receivers throughout the years, how he's since 2013 when he got drafted, how he's helping to develop them, right? So, he is he is a definitely classic example of actions speak louder than words. But who's the opposite of actions speak louder than words? Whose words speak louder than action? Well, it's the media, right? It's the Nick Wrights of the world. They come back at it and say, "Hey, da da da, we're gonna chat and we're gonna call you out, Keenan Allen, for being you're not winning championships and all this." I'm like, God, he does so much more than just a stat builder, right? And here's one other thing I just want to talk about to defend Keenan, that he may or may not be willing to acknowledge. He has been fortunate enough to have two phenomenal quarterbacks, obviously Phillip Rivers and then Herbert. But what's the one quality I would say that, as far as throwing to wide receivers, that both of them are pretty unique and really excel at, is distributing the football to where it needs to go to a wide variety of weapons. That's what Rivers did best, and that's what Herbert is doing. And so, meaning, okay, I'm going to hit Keenan on these important third downs, which he does routinely. But he's you don't see Keenan getting upset. Oh, I'm not getting the ball all the time. You want him to be upset to get the ball all the time, and he does. I know he's been vocal about that, I'm sure, but it's not like the end all be all, because again, he is a team first oriented wide receiver. And that is why he gets paid the money he gets paid, and why we love him as Charger fans. And we back him up on Twitter anytime we get a chance. Okay. And then the last thing, we'll come back to, kind of the Twitter controversy a little bit. I just love talking about Keenan and who he is as a player and a person. But let's kind of now talk about that second tweet that ended up happening. This most recent one, the one that made me really want to talk about this, was Keenan basically saw a PFF of all. We all know PFF had some controversial take, a tweet. It was, who is the most underrated wide receiver in the NFL? And of course they list off Keenan Allen as the first player. And then you got Hunter Renfrow, Tyler Lockett, and Deontay Johnson, DJ Moore, Tim Patrick, and a couple others. And Keenan's clearly fed up at this point, right? So that his response is, the fact that I keep getting put on these posts lets everybody know that it's clickbait, right? Totally just directly calling him out now at this point. And then he lists off his accomplishments in very general form. 100 catches, 1,000 yards, average the past 5 years. I think like one year he was like less than 10 yards, almost hitting 1,000. So that's 1,000 in my book. 5 Pro Bowls straight. And then he lists. Then he kind of calls out the rest of the list. He's like, check your top 5 lists and see if any of them have done the same. That's not directly calling out the other players like receivers like they're bad. But then he goes on to say, stop creating a perspective and show the facts, right? So he's basically saying, look at the numbers. At the very least, look at the numbers. And if they're not doing that just so they can help build a narrative, that's either malicious, which I don't really want to quite go that far, or it's lazy. These journalists are lazy, okay? They want to do quick clickbait and all that, but they got all this, everything that's going on, constantly flowing. Oh, we got to talk about the Chargers. Okay, let's throw up something on the Chargers. Oh, what's easy? What's the fast? Oh, we know who's underrated. Okay, that's an easy topic to talk about. Oh, we're just going to go ahead and throw Keenan Allen in there because that's the one we've heard about over and over and over again. He's not underrated in the world of the Charger fans. Not even close. We love him. We want him to be a Charger for life. At the end of the day, the national sports media is lazy. That's it. They want an easy topic to talk about, recycle and rehash this garbage, and then get people riled up because they know if they keep doing it, it's going to keep getting people riled up, and it's a win for them. And then it trickles down to the rest of the media, including YouTube, to talk about it. So all I'm saying is I don't have a fix for it, except for why don't you, PFF, Nick Wright, and a handful of other specific analysts, why don't you do a little bit more research? And maybe you don't like the Chargers as much as you like your Chiefs, don't go calling out that player unless you are able to back it up with at least some level of statistics and not talking about a whole game, whether they win or not, because you're clearly not looking at whether or not Keenan Allen's blocking or what his actual route was supposed to be on each play. You either are choosing to not talk about that, or you are actively, on purpose, not talking about it, which clearly that's worse. So I'm just going to say, not go that far and just say, sports media, you're being lazy. Let's be respectful of the players that, he's not a rookie. He's earned his right to make these comments. And quite frankly, you haven't. Okay. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate that, allowing me to chat with you about Keenan Allen. We all love him. He's not going to Green Bay. He's not going anywhere, and we're sticking up for him. We want him to get that another big contract and stay with us. So bolt up, and hopefully see you on the next podcast. Appreciate it.